I've seen it remarked over and over again. People were like, I've seen people that are more well known than Kim Porter that didn't get the outpouring of tributes and support from the entertainment, hip hop community, and everyone, had.
Okay, 44 people are active right now, so I expect 44 people to be spying on me.
Are we live?
Whenever you're ready, I can give you the countdown.
Okay, countdown.
3.
Welcome, everyone. Happy Hump Day. It's cold outside.
It's disgusting outside.
It's winter time.
Hey, Lamb Party. Welcome to Poppin' Off Pink. I'm your co-host, Chi-Chi.
I'm Julie Mars.
It's Kimber. Here today.
We're super excited because today is one for the books. We're going to talk about some game changers in hip-hop. But before we get to that, we're going to remind you that we have a Patreon page, patreon.com/badbitchesseria. We know it's the holidays, so give $1 or $2. Nothing crazy. And let's recap of what happened in episode 6, which got a lot of feedback on laid edges. We talked about the power of influence, covered off on Rihanna, Cardi B, Kiara Love. And we spilled some tea on ourselves.
Yep.
We talked about when we were kind of like the bad girl in someone's story.
Confessions.
Yeah. So if you missed episode 6, you definitely need to check that out.
Seriously. Get your lives together, people.
Yes.
You have dreams, don't you? You know what it means to want people to support your dreams.
So we first want to start off on a bit of a serious note and give a shout out to Diddy and both the Combs, Porter and Brown families for that matter. Literally the day after we taped episode 6, some very sad news in the hip hop community that Kim Porter, who was 47 years old, it just seemed like suddenly passed away. They're still determining cause of death, but she left behind 4 children, the oldest of which is 27. Quincy, who's making a name for himself, I think on a show called Star. King Combs, a.k.a. Christian, 20, and then 2 very young twin girls, Delilah and Jessie. And so, the funeral was held over the weekend. Can only imagine what Thanksgiving must have been like for that family. And it was interesting just, I've seen it remarked over and over again. People were like, I've seen people that are more well known than Kim Porter that didn't get the outpouring of tributes and support from the entertainment, hip hop community, and everyone, had really great things to say and memories and things like that. And I think when Beyonce posted some tributes to Kim, a lot of her fans were just completely lost. Some people thought she posted herself. It was like a throwback childhood photo of Kim. They're like, is that you? It was just like they were so lost. And other people were just like, who is she? We have no idea who this is. And I'm like, oh my God. And then, we posted some things that apparently a lot of people didn't know, which was, if you're familiar with Jodeci, the song Forever My Lady was written for Kim by LadyLeshurr. They have a child together. And if you've seen the movie Drumline, I mean, unless you're under the age of 15, I don't know how you have it, but that was based on Dallas Austin's life, and he grew up in the same town, Columbus, Georgia, with Kim Porter, and Zoe Saldana's role was written for him. Nick Cannon's role was written for her, and Nick Cannon's role was written for him.
I did not know that. I thought it was just probably the best thing Nick Cannon's ever done with his life, and that's it. That's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, again, speaking on what I know, who knows all the implications, but Janelle Monáe spoke about, Kim started a group called 3 Brown Girls in Atlanta, and they would have these, like, I don't want to call them open mics because it was not an open mic like you could just walk up off the street, but it was for the music community, and that's how Janelle Monáe was discovered. So she had a very touching tribute to Kim. So it's funny because I think it was on episode 1 or 2, we talked about women in hip-hop doesn't just mean, it's not limited to female MCs. At all, especially with, you know, the wives, the girlfriends, the reality shows and producers. You got Deb Antony, people like that. Like, women in hip-hop is a really diverse culture and group up in itself of hip-hop. So, again, to Kim Porter, rest in peace. I feel like I did all the talking on that. What do you guys have to add?
I just, you know, like, what do you say when people pass? Like, all I can offer is my condolences, you know? I remember much, like, way, way, way back in my life, like, there was some mention of her, and I think that was just pretty much either when she was either with Diddy or leaving Diddy, and then she kind of just regressed, you know, like, didn't really hear anything about her from that point on, and I think that's why her death has the impact that it does, because it's like you kind of just forgot about her, and then she's like, you know, suddenly she passes away and everyone's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's nothing I can really say about it other than it's a sad story. And I think it's really mysterious that the cause hasn't been pinpointed yet. And I can't help but wonder if that's because, you know, she's a mother and there are certain things that they may not want people to know. You know, it's just very, very strange and very, just another weird celebrity death.
Yeah, it's very sudden.
Yeah.
Sort of out of nowhere. She had pneumonia.
That's the thing. I kept hearing flu and pneumonia symptoms, and then the person, whoever called 911, reported cardiac arrest. So you have, like, flu, pneumonia, cardiac arrest, but then no cause of death. That was deferred until they get the blood work, toxicology.
And then going back to something we had discussed a couple episodes ago, someone had reported that she was expressing that she was having, like, discomfort and pains and, like, flu-like symptoms, and she was being ignored by doctors. So, I don't know. Like, I don't know what it could be, but all the same, it doesn't make it any less sad, you know?
I mean, I just send love to all of her children because, you know, family is your foundation.
Yes.
And so I just send them so much love and strength and empowerment. And I hope that with Diddy still in their lives, you know, they have that support that they need.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about, obviously, the youngest girls the most, and even her 20-year-old son. You're right. Like, for me, I heard her name or seen her before, and then I kind of forgot. But then when I watched the movie a few years ago that came out called Dope, Quincy was in it. And his character was hilarious. And so that led me to follow him on Instagram. And I noticed he just always doted on his mother. So I knew she had the other kids, but the first person that came to mind was Quincy, because it seemed like they had a particularly close relationship. He was the oldest. But it was nice to see Diddy and LadyLeshurr come together, because at one point, you know, there was some, you know, kind of territory issues because Diddy had adopted him, but Al's his biological dad. So it was nice, and they acknowledged that, you know, that they had come to a place of peace. So that was really good to see. So yeah,
Let's get rid of this sadness.
I know. I was gonna say. So, you know, again, we're talking about game changers, and it's interesting. We just kind of covered Kim Porter, and the next person we want to talk about, Sister Souljah, actually has a connection to Diddy, believe it or not. At one point, we know her as obviously a badass in a lot of different ways. She was MC, definitely militant, or thought to be militant at the time. I think a lot of her ideas now are more mainstream because we've been more vocal as a community about, like, our worth and our power, our voting power, our economic power. She was talking about that back in the late 80s, and everybody was like, what? what the
like,
heck, be
she's
quiet.
So radical, yeah.
You know.
Her time.
But she was actually, she was executive director of Daddy's House. I don't know if it's still around. It was a social program, the nonprofit for Bad Boy. And a lot of that programming was both educational and cultural, and done with partnership in Columbia University. She was actually educated at Rutgers and did some programming at Cornell. World traveler, to say the least. So this was not someone just like blowing steam. Like, she's extremely well-rounded. To my knowledge, the only female member of Public Enemy, and you know Public Enemy. And then, of course, you know, as a teenager, I read Coldest Winter Ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took me a minute to realize at that age that this was the same woman who was like the militant black voice. I am African, I am woman, I am power. So to me, it just really shows the range of her brilliance, that she could write in such detail about, you know, Winter's experience, the sexual experience, the, you know, having to learn how to survive, her prison experience. Like, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah. I just know her for writing books that I had no business reading at the age that I was when I became aware of her. But, yeah, she was out here doing the damn thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I was waiting for that movie to come out. Okay? Because I remember...
Is it going to be a Tyler Perry movie? Because I feel like
Absolutely
it has no
not.
choice but to be.
No.
It's not going to
Not
be
with
like
her
a
and like
Lionsgate
Jada
production.
Pinkett doing the
Yeah.
production. I don't see that. It was supposed to be HBO.
It was supposed to be, and then she bought her rights back, right?
Because
it took too long. They changed.
They changed.
ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
HBO plays too many games.
Yeah. But I remember the Coldest Winter Ever really changed my life. I was like I didn't like to read that much growing up. But I remember I don't know how I heard about the book, but somehow I picked up a copy and I could not stop reading it.
Right.
I read it for like 3 days straight. I think my mom was like, "Are you gonna eat? Are you okay?" It was so well written. It was such a good story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think now she has like 4
At least.
books in the series.
Yeah, there was a book called, oh my goodness, well, whatever the book was called, I'll find it in a minute. Deeper Love Inside. That book, which came out a few years ago, Will Smith actually hosted her launch party, which I was like, wow, amazing. So she has a very close, I mentioned Jada earlier, she has a very close relationship, her and her family and her husband, with both Will and Jada. But like you said, they bought the rights back from HBO, so it's kind of just been, you know, in process. And I think she mentioned something like, you know, some really great films take
years,
15, 20 years to be made. So I will wait, because I want to make sure that when it's done right. But one thing I want to go back to from when she was an active MC or female MC, she actually coined a name for herself. She referred to herself as a raptivist. And she was very cognizant about how blacks are portrayed in the media. And I feel like we've definitely talked about that a lot. Specifically black women, you know, an organization I'm a part of, WEAN, is very much hyper-focused on how black women are portrayed in the media. It just, from all accounts, it just seems like Sister Souljah was way, way ahead of her time. And I don't want to say was, because I think she got on somebody in an interview that said she was on hiatus. She's never on hiatus. She's always teaching, sharing. I don't know what she's doing at this moment, but
Super active.
yeah.
Shout out to her.
I like that that she came from the hood and now she's like amongst the old school upper echelon of the hip hop industry. I think that's really dope. I think her progression is really dope. I like that, you know, in a way she was somewhat destined to be in a higher place, because it's like to come from the projects and just go straight to school and traveling. Yeah, she's definitely one of a kind, for sure.
She came to speak at my college when I was like a senior or junior. And She came to our house for students of color to like just meet with us and talk to us. And she was super humble, you know. I just remember sitting next to her and being like, I love your book. Like, you know, I read it so much in high school. And, you know, she was just really chill, but very knowledgeable, you know, humble soul. And that's what I really appreciate about her. Like, you can tell she really has a lot going for her. She has a lot of knowledge and capability. But when you meet her, she's just like very chill.
Yeah.
What's her sign?
That's a good question.
Oh, that.
Someone Google her sign. Google it.
Well, while you're Googling her sign, I want to bring up something she said in her interview with Sway. She said most men are afraid of her.
Would make sense.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of men like, you know, stupid, quiet, easygoing women that don't really stir up. Like, she got acknowledgement from Bill Clinton.
Oh,
I feel
yes.
like
Thank you for reminding
would be
me.
intimidated by someone like
Not
that.
exactly a nice acknowledgement.
But all the same, like, you know, the president at the time made it a point to acknowledge your opinions. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, no matter who your whatever your political leanings, I've always found it fascinating, to your point, how we just roll over for anything Clinton, and all this shit is documented. You know, the super predator comments, Bill kind of going in on Sister Souljah, like the 3 strikes you're out legislation, the same legislation that Jay-Z so eloquently has written articles for, and then he campaigned for Hillary. I just find it very
Jay-Z
interesting.
is really annoying. I just don't.
I'm like, you realize that you're going for the same person, that
People
like
can
the
only be
policies are
so
connected
woke.
to the same group.
People can only be so woke, and these celebrities that don't have to like deal with the effects of the system we live in head on will never understand it. So if you want to sit around and endorse a white owl that says she carries hot sauce in her bag, that's on you.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like I've always said, if you're gonna vote, be informed. We're gonna have to get back to y'all on Sister Souljah. But the next person I want to talk about, believe it or not, they are connected. She's a Virgo, because I remember from checking her out last night. Corinne Steffens.
It makes so much sense that she's a Virgo.
I want to, let's shout out Hip Hop Biggest Fan. What did he say? He said, weak ass suckers are afraid of strong women. Amen. Nothing is more attractive to secure men than a super solid woman.
That is quite right.
So shout out to Hip Hop Biggest Fan, and also shout out to Sister Souljah's husband, because clearly he can see the diamond. Yeah. But yeah, Corinne Steffens. If you're wondering, like, how the hell are they connected? Well, part of the work that
aside from her frequenting parties that they were probably at.
Sure. Well, she was interviewed by Chuck D, believe it or not, when he was on radio at the same time as Wendy Williams. And that's really not what I wanted to focus on, though. Like, Sister Souljah, a lot of her work is with victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, trauma, childhood trauma, and abuse. And whatever you think of Corinne, a.k.a. Superhead, she's been very open about her upbringing, her childhood.
Yes.
She didn't have a solid foundation. Her mom, you know, had several children. They're all different dads. She said, some of the dads, they weren't sure who the dad was. She was raped at age 13.
Yes.
She ran away at age 16. And even one of the interviews, I can't remember who, she was very open about. She said, yeah, I wish my mom would have kind of had it together. I don't know what the age difference is, but I got the impression that her mom was a young mom. And so she was like, if she had been ready, she said something to that effect, she would have taught me better.
Yeah.
So she just kind of ran away to make a way for herself. And, you know, just kind of kept running, you know. And she ended up with Cool G Rap. If you guys aren't familiar with Cool G Rap,
I read the book.
yeah, and I do your Googles. Old school hip hop. They have a son together, her only child, to my knowledge. And that, according to her, that relationship was both, you know, it just kind of turned very tumultuous, and then it turned abusive.
He cracked her ribs.
Yeah.
Like he stomped her ribs out, and she ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, so part of, believe it or not, when she just blew the game open with her book that sold over 1 million copies, Confession, another author. It's another way they're connected. Confessions of a Video Vixen. A part of the proceeds actually goes to, every time there's a book sold, to the Boys and Girls Club of America. The book peaked at number 5 on the bestsellers, and at some point back in 2008, she actually started her own publishing company. She's been on Oprah, you know, obviously appeared in a lot of videos. I think her first one was Jay-Z's Poppy back in 91. But just my own personal, just from memory, I just remember when the book came out, we didn't have the internet. The internet was radio, like whatever the big radio stations were at the time. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? First thing, I didn't know who she was, but I was like, whoever this chick is, like, she needs to be worried about her safety. That was just not something, now we wouldn't blink, right?
Yeah.
But back then, that was just not something that had ever been done or that you did.
No one exposed anybody.
Yeah, and she was naming names in a lot of cases. In some cases, she was more like, oh, at a big record company, I walked in on this or what have you. But it was, like, insane.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't, you know, whether you're a fan or not,
I'm a
Amber
fan.
Rose. We wouldn't have Amber Rose if it wasn't for Corinne Steffens.
If it wasn't for Kanye West.
Because there's no amount of there's no amount of slut shaming that anyone now could endure versus what she went through back then.
True.
Like, I went back and looked at the old interviews. Like, she
Yeah.
was completely dragged through the mud, whereas now you kind of have a debate. It's a little bit more 50-50. Some people are in this camp. Back then, it was just like, no.
Right.
No, absolutely not.
I remember, like, this past summer, like, I love to watch, I have, like, guilty pleasures. Like, I love to watch Cops, even though I know, like, I know. Everyone hates the NYPD right now, but I love Cops.
Why do you love Cops?
It's just interesting to watch, like,
The takedown.
yeah, I love when they chase them. I'm not gonna get into it, but I like Cops, I like Hoarders, I like watching Intervention, I love shit like that. So, after I'd watched every episode of everything I've mentioned, I watched this, like, Video Vixen documentary, and the girls are talking about what's going on, and this is, like, a couple years after I had actually read the Confessions of a Video Vixen book. And I remember seeing Corinne in the Mystical music video, looking amazing.
And she's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's stunning. And, you know, in the interview she talked about, like, they mentioned her because she was, like, such a firecracker at all the video shoots. She was always the one shining, you know. And then they touched on the book, and, like, a lot of rappers and a lot of video girls are like, you don't do that. You know, you're not supposed to talk about that. So, like, they
So she was
obviously
breaking
still
and
drag
making
her.
rules, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean,
Pretty
again,
much.
we all have a lane.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like where you could do that. It just takes a lot of, I know she's a girl, but it takes a lot of balls. Because it was an industry, it still is an industry to an extent, but video vixens in the 90s and the 2000s was an industry that a lot of people wanted to be a part of. And she was just like, fuck that. This is what I'm doing. No, I know, yeah, that's the rule, but I'm not listening to that. No. I'm making new rules. I'm writing this book. I'm doing this.
That was bold.
I'm going to still come back and get money from these guys that I wrote about in the book. And you know what's funny? She said that a lot of the folks that she's like, I could have said more, so believe it or not, some of the people I wrote about were actually happy for me when I put the book out because they were kind of relieved that she didn't reveal more. So she really just was... She's a game changer.
Yeah, like, I've heard Lil Wayne speak in support of her. He loves her. I think she just outsmarted everyone, and everyone's upset about it. Like, after years and years of being in the trenches and just letting people do whatever and get away with whatever, you know, it's good that she was able to make a profitable decision, live her life, and show herself to be more than, you know, ass and titties. Like, she has a brain, too. I think she's great.
I mean, I think it's great that she wrote that book and she was confident enough to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not slacking on any confidence over there.
She even dragged Bill Maher. Like, Bill Maher drags everybody, so that was pretty crazy.
Well, she has compared herself to Cleopatra from a standpoint of power. And
I can see that.
she's defined that as sexual prowess being a part of it, but not the end-all, be-all of it.
Damn right.
And, you know, I know some grandmas that are huge fans of SuperHead. I want to know what you guys think about this quote. There's so many quotes I could have pulled, but pull up this one. She said, "Judgment from other sinners is invalid."
Damn right. A negative cancels out a negative. End of story.
So I think, you know, we've all heard, you know, in whatever context, that, you know, women have this sexual power or whatever. And obviously Corinne has a lot of it. I think it was very interesting that she both acknowledged that and said, yeah, but that's not the end-all, be-all of it. I'm going to take that as something in my toolbox.
Right.
And really bust everything open as far as, like, my opportunities, my money, my name. Like, she will forever be a topic of discussion because of what she did.
She's
and even
immortalized now.
Yeah, even the name Superhead came from, they say a Jadakiss song, but it had nothing to do with her. She didn't meet Jada until years later.
Who cares what Jadakiss says?
I don't. We have questions from a viewer.
Who are your top 5 rappers? And who's a better rapper than Cardi or Nicki?
Lord.
Who wants to take? Who wants to
Oh,
take
wait,
what?
who's a better rapper, Cardi or Nicki?
Oh, Cardi or
Okay.
Nicki.
Cardi B is not a rapper. I'll start there.
Okay.
She's not a rapper. She is a pop star that can deliver lyrics and gimmicks that have been prepared for her. Nicki Minaj, y'all know how I feel about that. As far as I'm concerned, Safari wrote a great deal of her lyrics. Safari fostered her flow.
That was
I don't know. I feel like he's still under her thumb.
absolutely not.
Well,
If you watch his movements, absolutely not. He's done everything to go against her.
I don't know. Like, you know, he has like the lawsuit going on. We don't know the details of that in its entirety. Who knows? But I don't think either of them are rappers. And I don't have a top 5. I love Freddie Gibbs, Gangsta Gibbs. I love him. Baby Mother, I'm like obsessed with her right now. She just dropped Mother's Day 3 and it's everything.
Mother's Day 3.
It's like
I
my
love that
chocolate
title.
ice cream after a long day. And of course I love Kanye West, even though like a strong 99.9% of the world isn't fucking with him right now. And I really like Danny Brown. So I guess I gave you
Is
like
that 4?
instead of
Okay.
5.
Alright.
I don't
I'll
have
take
a
the
5.
top 5. Here's the thing, before I get into that. It's a lot of folks in hip-hop that I just enjoy their work, or I have certain memories attached to their work. But to me, how you make it into my top 5 is I keep returning. I return to your new music, and I return to the classics or your old music. So Nas and Tupac are up there along with Biggie. I know that's very cliche. So
Nas
those are
is
the
annoying.
well, you know, you have to separate the art from the person. So if I can't speak on him person wise, but the body of work I keep returning to. There's certain songs that haunt me, and even, you know, some of his newer stuff that he did, both with Kanye and with Swizz recently. Like, there's just an energy that comes with his rhyming, his style, and I could be anywhere and I can picture what he's saying. I'm in the vibe. It's almost like listening to Nas is like watching a movie.
Very illustrative.
That is true, though. That is very true about Nas.
With Tupac, it's the raw emotion, again, energy, but it's that emotion. I mean, I know he's a Gemini, but I feel like he must have some type of water rising or moon sign because it's so raw. It's like you don't even know what he's talking about. You could just hear the cadence of his voice and never know what the words are, and you know if it's a sad song, if it's a fuck the world song, if it's Mama I Love You song. Like, I love that. And Biggie is just like Biggie. Like, I don't even know what to say. It's like everybody wanted to be at that party and those videos, you know. There's just a lot. It's like a combination of those two. Oh God, I gotta round it out with 2 more. It's
Busta
hard.
Rhymes is dope.
It's hard. I'm going
me.
to say, definitely Missy, because I feel like
Missy,
she
yes,
just
that's
broke
a
a
good
lot of
one.
molds. Not just with her music. Like, I feel like people downplay her music because of the visual, but just everything. And Missy can sing also.
She's very talented.
And she's written for, I mean, we talked about this on the last episode, by the way. She was, recognized in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which is the first and only woman in hip-hop to be recognized for that. So I'd say Missy. Fifth one, I'm going to just say, just based on, again, the music I return to, I don't feel like he's the strongest rapper per se, but from an artist standpoint and just somebody I automatically usually relate to, again, I'm talking about in the totality of his body of work, Kanye West, because
Yes, Lord.
there's so many, every album is a different vibe. You know, if I'm working out or I'm just like, I just want to rock out and I don't necessarily want to listen to Nirvana that day, I can put on Yeezus. You know, it took me a long time to really finally get into the whole 808s because I'm not really into, like, you know, the heartbreak stuff. But I eventually connected to that. Obviously, my Dark Twisted Fantasy was a favorite. The first two albums were favorites, and I will never stop listening to those first two albums on top of everything else. And there's just, like, cultural references. You know, it's not even my favorite song, but every now and then, you know, Gold Digger comes up just because it's funny, or the Luther Vandross song comes up, and I grew up.
Yeah.
I was actually, believe it or not, y'all, I was introduced to Twista by my grandmother.
Oh,
And shout out to my grandmother. My grandmother's very active in the community in Chicago. Like, she has several commendations from every mayor since Harold Washington and probably before. And she came home one day and she's like, yeah, I met some rapper. His name is Tongue Twister. And I was like, okay, again. And she's like, no, I'm telling you, he can rap really fast. I'm like, okay. And then later he became Twista.
Wow.
So because of her, I looked into Tongue Twister and who became Twista. And Kanye's had some, in my opinion, some really dope collaborations with Twista. I was home, by the way. Just want to shout out Chicago. I had an amazing time. I'll share a real quick story with y'all. My uncle can't see, and he's waiting to get cataract surgery. This is my grandmother's brother. And my grandma is having some problems with speech, so she has to start writing a lot of things. So he was waiting on her to come to his house. I'm sitting there laughing with him. He's telling me stories, because my uncle used to sing also in a band, and he traveled overseas when he was in the military. And I started naming old school people. I'm like, Millie Jackson. He's like, yeah, that's my... And I'm opening his record collection. And I was like, Frankie Lyman. I can't stand that motherfucker. I'm going to tell you why. So then she shows up, and then she's trying... He's like, what a pair we make. You can't really talk that well right now. And you're writing something. I haven't had my cataract surgery, so I can't read what the fuck you're writing. And I just died.
God.
I'm like, this is why I love me and I love my family, because I grew up under him and her. And, you know, they're older. They're both in their 80s now. And just shout out to them, because I'm like, y'all just, we know how to, and that's a Chicago thing, too. Like, we're funny. You're going to get cracked on. You better get a thick skin and know how to crack back. And I just thought that was hilarious. So,
shout out to Sherry Lola. She says we classy.
Hey,
And we official.
Johnny Go Figure just joined.
Shout out to Johnny, my heart and soul. Always supporting me.
That's
Oh my
beautiful though,
goodness.
Gigi. Like, that's so awesome, right? Sometimes you aren't with your family for a little while, you go back and you're like, you know what? This is why I love my family. And it just reminds you of who you are.
Oh my God, yes.
You don't
put
realize
things
how much you
into
take from
perspective.
them.
Do you ever have moments where you're like, I am my mom, or I am my dad?
I am my dad, like, all the time.
You know, like, you do something.
I'm my
and
grandma and my grandpa.
You're doing an exact action of someone that you grew up around.
Yes.
And you're
Even
just
the way
like,
I eat,
"Oh."
everybody's like, oh, God, you're going to literally turn into our grandmother.
Yeah.
Because she's
How do
still,
you eat?
like, working out. She's the only one. I'm not trying to... I'm sorry. Some of y'all going to hear some stuff. We had the traditional Thanksgiving, and they knew not to bring it near me. Because 2 different houses I left that day. As I'm walking out, they're like, yeah, so Cousin Otis is going to bring over some pig feet and chitlins. And I'm like, y'all. And my kids were like, what?
The sinner's
What are
platter.
chitlins? I was like, they're pig intestines. And they were like, why would someone eat? I'm like, we're not
Because
going to get into
they're
that.
poor.
We're not going to get
And
into
you got
that.
to use every single piece of that pig.
But that's
just
all
it.
we were given.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not something I eat, but
Mm-hmm.
they did make me try it when I was younger. It's like on one hand, it's like a source of pride because that's all we were given.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, we're going to hook this shit up and make it
Right.
taste
Spice
good.
it
Now
up.
we know that it's not good for us, but, you know, mind you, these are people well into their 80s.
Right.
So they got the magic sauce, you know, as far as longevity is concerned. Because they're not sitting around eating celery. But to your point, yeah, my grandmother was the only one I would say out of that generation from my family that was like, always eat a starch and a green and a meat. Don't like just load up on starch. And she was always stuck that in
She
our
was
head.
like,
That's hard.
She's like, before you, even if you go eat some, you know, sausage, make sure you eat a piece of fruit because it's good. It lines your stomach and it protects against cancer. And I'm like,
Secret.
she's a nurse by trade also.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yeah.
She knows. Aw.
I
Yeah.
had a vegan Thanksgiving, and I
Did
wasn't
you?
happy because it made me gassy.
Did you have tofurkey?
I had vegan steak. Shout out to Ital Kitchen. It was beautifully prepared.
Like seashell?
Everything was served course by course. Like, you know, they cooked as we ate. It was amazing, but I was hella gassy the next day.
So, like, what was in the steak? Like, what made it?
I think like soy or something.
It was soy
Like
steak.
vegan
Seaweed,
magic.
soy.
You know, fairy dust, rainwater.
Dr. Zay said his top 5 are DMC from Run DMC. Hell yeah. Tupac. Okay. Eminem.
LL
Sorry.
Cool J.
I'm sorry. I can't read. LL Cool J. Oh, yeah. Ice Cube for sure. And Jay-Z would be my 6th man. Yeah, Jay-Z is my 6th man too. It took me a while to warm up to him. You know why? Because I was in the West Coast, East Coast battle, and I was like, oh, I'm Team Tupac. So it took me a long time to even start listening to Jay-Z. But so once I became an adult, I was like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, Tupac is just, he's so fun. That's all I think about every time I see it.
Did you both see All Eyes on Me?
No. I heard it was
couldn't
trash,
do
though.
it. Yeah, when
heard it
I
was
started
trash.
hearing the behind the scenes stuff, I was like, I can't support that.
Yeah.
I saw it.
You know what turned me? I was gonna see it. You could thank Jada Pinkett Smith because when she went on her rant, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna support this.
I don't know.
If it comes on like maybe Netflix
On
or
Bounce.
something.
Yeah, I saw it on
Bounce
Netflix.
Did you see it?
Bounce
Yeah,
channel.
I don't know if it's still there.
What did you think?
I thought it was good.
Oh.
In the wait, in the sense that, okay,
You're so positive. You're like
listen,
struggling right now.
listen. Why I'm gonna say it was good. I think it's really important for Black lives to be celebrated.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we see so many movies about white people all the time,
Or slave movies.
or if it's not right, or if it is about us, it's
the Negro in the
Slaves
cabinet
and
that knew how to do
entertainment.
calculus. Like I'm over that.
I'm over
so
it.
over
I'm
it.
so tired of that narrative.
so the reason that I wanted to see it was because I wanted to support, you know, this
Black cinema.
Black cinema, honey.
I want to support it, but if somebody make a movie about me, please be accurate.
Yeah.
I
mean,
want
that
it
is-
to be as glamorized as possible.
Who do you want to play you?
That's a good question.
Oh my god. I guess someone with eyes as big as mine. I guess that could work. But I don't know, because like by the time a movie would be made about me, the people I would elect now would be too old.
I know. We're
But
just having
but if
fun.
now like someone could
We're
play
just
you,
being
who
silly.
would it be?
Yeah.
Vivica Fox like 20 years ago.
Ooh.
20
Okay.
years ago. Or, of course, Hallie, because she's just like fucking amazing. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And probably Amber Rose. Just 'cause
That's what I. You know what, Kimber? That's what I would say for you, Amber Rose.
I could see that.
I could see that.
Amber,
Yeah.
do
could
my
see that.
movie.
Judy, who would
Yeah.
play you?
Yeah. Who would play me? No.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. Who are you thinking?
The
Tell me,
first
I don't
person
know.
that popped in my head was Janelle Monáe.
I
can
can
see that. That's a
I
good
see
one.
that
That's a
for
good
you.
one. Yeah.
Definitely.
I will take that. And what
Yeah.
about
And she would be able to like
Yeah.
act and like really
I love
deliver.
Yeah.
I love Janelle Monáe. Dirty Computer, honey. Did you guys see all of it?
No. I've been living under a rock. Just
Oh, you
being
know
a
I'm
house
under
cat.
a rock.
Oh well, it's like her full album, but it's in a series of videos, so it's really
Oh,
good.
so
like
she
a
did a visual.
visual.
Yeah,
Nice.
love
Okay.
it. Yeah, love
Okay.
it. Yeah. Who would play Chi-Chi?
Definitely
Yeah, we'll talk
like,
about that.
definitely like Angela Bassett or
Angela Bass.
Violetta Davis. Like
No.
one of the two. I
That-
feel
those
like
people play my
Violetta-
mom, not me. They're like 60 years old.
Well, who?
Who would you like to play you?
Well, she's deceased. But for a very long time, people told me that they thought I looked like Left Eye.
Oh.
And I was Left Eye for like Halloween once. In
Well,
high
I feel
school.
like Left Eye is like crazier than you.
Mm.
Like I feel like she's a little
She
bit
said,
more rambunctious. Like the reason why I said Violetta and Angela isn't because of their age, even though they both look damn good for their age.
Oh, Viola Davis.
It's because
yeah.
they both
Love
have
both of
like that energy that you have, like that kind of strength and like intensity and drive. I feel like they'd be able to do
They're
that.
awesome actors.
Interesting. All right. Well, they're both. I love both of them. Definitely both game changers. I do want to talk about again the effect, and I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Thank you. What's the Cardi B effect?
Oh.
What has been? Because we're rounding out the year. You know, we're gonna do our holiday shout outs later, but as we look
need
back,
to do a list of who needs to stay in 2018. Who and what needs to stay in 2018. We need to banish some people.
well, I mean, somebody asked a question on our live earlier about like who we thought was a better rapper, but Cardi herself said that she's an entertainer who raps.
Right. She's not a rapper.
So
I'm
she
glad
herself
she
has
knows.
said that.
I'm
And
glad
she also
knows.
said, I want to tell you guys a quote she had. I have mixed feelings about this quote, I'm going to just say before I read it, but I'm not going to read it in her voice.
Read it in her voice.
Yeah, do it. I want to hear.
Just be careful with your jaw.
Oh,
Make
God.
sure it doesn't unhinge.
You got to follow the trends. It is what it is. At the end of the day, you need to be with what sells.
Oh my God.
That's what Cardi said.
Yeah, I mean,
Judy, stop that.
I'm not surprised, you know. She caters to a relatively basic audience. Take it however you want to take it. You know, she caters to a basic audience, and a great deal of that audience always wants to be on trend with what's going on, is afraid to explore their individuality. So I'm not terribly shocked
Say that
that she
again?
would say
You said
something
is
like
afraid to explore their individuality.
Mhm.
That's very
because
interesting.
That's a
like
good
she
observation.
basically
Mhm.
panders to those kids in high school and junior high that always wanted to be fucking cool, so they would go along with whatever and have no idea what they really like or who they really are, and end up doing fuck shit and creating chaos in other people's lives. But the Cardi effect to me is a basic effect, where everyone feels like they can keep being ratchet, they can keep being loud, they don't have to learn how to read or write, they can say things like footages and be cute, and that's just it. And they can make millions. Like, it's not okay, but it is what it is. Like, she's pretty much like the greenhouse effect. Like, she's pretty much like just, she's got to be responsible for destroying the ozone layer at this point.
Oh my God.
I think that what she said, the quote that you just read, it's interesting that she's aware of what she's doing. Like, she's fully aware of the fact that, you know, she's just playing into where the money is.
Yep.
And she's not really about the artistry. I think
all.
she opened up about the fact that she knows that there's music that she would like to do,
Right.
but she thinks that will make her money.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not going to do that music. And I think for artists, that's a choice you constantly have to make is, do I do the music that I actually want to do and
Right.
just, you know, be true to my art, or do I kind of go for what's, like Kimber was saying, what's trendy right now?
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so grateful for artists like Frank Ocean. Like,
I love Frank Ocean.
everybody
Yes.
does, but then everyone has like that kind of that supply and demand thing. Like with artists don't really like supply. That's more of a record label's job to supply the demand. But like people tend to get those lines blurred as listeners. So if Frank Ocean wants to wait another 10 fucking years before he drops an EP or a single, like, we would just have to deal with it. Because he's someone that's not going to compromise the quality and what he wants to be remembered for. Whereas other people will sell out with no problem.
Yeah, it depends on your goals and how you shift those goals. I mean, maybe if you're kind of starting out and you really blow up, it's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to make a lot of investments. So to your point, I can take my time with my next project and do what I want to do. Whereas if you're just kind of riding the wave and, it's like, oh, I blew up, I got to do the next big thing, the next big thing, the next big thing, then you tend to have to compromise more.
Right. Like, I feel like Mariah Carey is kind of going through that right now. Like, she's dropping a lot of trap-ish sounding stuff, a lot of pop-ish sounding stuff, a lot of current stuff. But every time she sings or does a live show, you can see how much it takes out of her. And just to keep making money, just to keep shit going, she's going to keep on doing what she's doing and pandering. Even though she could keep singing all the classics she made and have a residency in Vegas. Yeah.
Well, I tried to just, because we're rounding out the year and looking at the totality of hip-hop, I tried to objectively put into words what I think the Cardi B effect is. And what I came up with is she's really shown how because the whole, black experience, whether you're African-American or some other background in America, is one of survival, right? So I feel like she's demonstrating how to survive and thrive. And, she has the new Fashion Nova deal. She has this music competition show. I think feel like she was qualified. And again, she bringing it back to her own characterization. I'm an entertainer who raps. That's what sticks with me. If I had to just put it into one phrase, what's the Cardi B effect on hip hop? I'm an entertainer who raps. So the question is, how many more potential? We already have seen some that haven't blown up quite as, but she created a lane, I guess, in hip hop for entertainers
for mediocrity,
who rap.
for complete and utter mediocrity. Just call a thing a thing.
It's an effect, though. It's a game changer. Random question: Have any of you ladies seen? I have not. The Black Klansman movie with Denzel Washington's son.
I wanted to see it.
I heard really good things about it.
Yeah, me too.
I can just never get my ass outside to the movie theater.
Tisk.
It's like the carpet always stinks. The seats always smell like baby vomit.
I wanted to see the movie. I don't know if they came. I feel like they came out at the same time. The guy from Get Out. What was the name of that movie? He's like, it was like one of those, abstract type films. I cannot remember his name, but he was the guy in Get Out that every time he
the caller, the telemarketer thing?
Yes.
Oh, sorry to bother you.
Thank you.
I wanted to see that too.
I still want to see that.
I heard that was
and
really
one of
good
those
too.
like gorgeous girls that I just love is in it too.
Tessa.
Tessa. Girl,
Yeah, Tessa,
looking
that's
like
right. She was in that movie.
a jar of peanut butter.
All right.
Amazing.
I'm going to quiz them real quick. Do you guys remember
I'm gonna fail.
Let's see if anybody, don't answer guys after they answer if you're watching on live. Do you remember the hullabaloo that Kendrick Lamar's verse on Control caused? The shockwave that it caused through hip hop?
No, because I don't like Kendrick Lamar's
You don't
voice.
have to like Kendrick.
I
This
don't-
was a big deal.
I avoid
What
him
did
at
he
all
say?
costs. What do you say?
His, Google it when y'all get home. His verse was so crazy. It was during the BET cypher. Everyone else was kind of like playing their part, I would say, kind of like staying in their lane. I think Big Sean was in that particular cypher. And when Kendrick did his verse, he went in, he went crazy. He said, it's like sometimes, again, kind of like the Corinne Stephan thing. You got to do some crazy shit sometimes to make your mark, right? And put your place in history. And he said in that verse, He was the king of New York, which caused a whole lot of fucking controversy. Just to say you're the king of New York and be a younger artist, and then to be from the West Coast. I bring that up because I wanted to put that in everyone's mind, just to kind of level set. Because we talked about the Cardi B effect, but I want to talk about the Shether effect. Because as I'm looking at how hip-hop collectively reacted to it, and just to give y'all the date drop, February 24th, 2017 is when Shether dropped. That's what it was compared to, that it sent the same, if not more, you know, a bigger shockwave through all of hip-hop, but especially female hip-hop, because there's nothing you can compare that to at all.
A 7-minute diss track.
7-minute diss, and went all the way in, and again, it shook not just the content, but people were brought into this. It was like people had to go on Twitter and go on social say, no, I did not sleep with Nicki Minaj. You know, it was Ebro, it was Trey Songz, it was all types of allegations, her brother's court case, like all this stuff was brought up in Shether. And like you said, it was 7 minutes. It was over Ether. I don't know if I'm the only one who noticed this, but the fact that it was over Ether, and Ether was a diss track to Jay-Z, and Nicki has this kind of like mentor relationship with Jay-Z and Kimber. They're both Sagittariuses, and that's something she spoke about before. There was a lot of little, and I think we touched on this briefly in a previous episode, but Nicki, in one of her recent Queen Radio shows, gave props to oh my God, I almost said Nicki, gave props to Remy for Shether. Yeah, she said she did her thing. I mean, she didn't go on and, you know.
Really? She gets on my last fucking nerve.
But what is the Shether effect? If I'm gonna let y'all define that. What's been the Shether effect since that dropped?
Well, for one, I just want to quickly address the whole Kendrick Lamar thing. You know, people love to just like disregard things and bypass things. Like every time black people get upset about us not being nominated for an Oscar, I always say, have we done anything Oscar worthy? You get mad about Kendrick Lamar saying he's the king of New York, and he's essentially stepped in and stepped over all New York rappers at this point. How mad can you be? The Shether effect, though, it's like, the fact that it's been a year already.
I can't believe that.
I'm just like, wow.
Almost 2 years.
Just about, like.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know, it's like, it was a 7-minute diss track, you know, it probably got more plays on YouTube than on the radio for that very reason. I feel like Remy kind of just shot herself in the foot, you know, playing that game. I don't really think there is a Shether effect.
Really?
I feel like there was like a momentary blip, you know, it was like another beef, and
it definitely got people excited.
Yeah, but then Nicki came out
we love beef in hip-hop.
Nicki just came out and reminded Remy that she shot someone over like a couple grand and spent 8 years in jail away from her son. Like, that's all we need to hear at that point, you know? I don't really feel like there's a Shether effect. If anything, at this point, that's where Cardi has an effect. The shoe throwing, like making beefs real.
Right.
Because now we have the Cash Me Outside girl wetting up the side of Iggy Azalea's head.
Oh my God.
So, if anything, that had more of an effect than
Who are the
Shether.
white leaders in the white community that are addressing this?
No one. No one.
The white on white crime.
No one.
I just remember just trying to listen to Shether, and it was really hard for me. I think when Nicki came out, you know, with her sort of diss track, it was more creative.
Yeah, and she had help.
You know,
not help like against Remy, but you had two other people on the track, so you kind of lost points for that.
She made it like a hit single.
Like, hey, go play this in the club. It's like, no, we need you to put on.
She made she got radio plays. She made some money.
She made money off of it.
Like I mean, I don't feel like Remy made that much of an impact. Like, it was cool to sit and listen to you know, all the dirt and all the and, you know, deflated ass cheeks and all of that. That was interesting. But
I was just kind of like, why? At the end of the day, what is this really doing for you, girl?
nothing. Like, it's getting plays on YouTube, not on the radio. Like, it's so fucking long, you can't even.
And then it was blocked by Nas's folks because she didn't clear the sample.
Like, you didn't even get endorsement from Nas. You didn't get pardon from Nas.
It was like a fabulous thing, right? Because like everybody follows his mixtapes, but he don't really have many albums.
And this is what I mean.
So it was kind of like it got the street cred and the street play, and it was hilarious. Wiz Khalifa said he didn't know about it until he came home and his mom was playing it. Some people were like, hip hop's alive again. Hip hop biggest fan said that back to Kendrick Lamar real quick, he stole that line from Corrupt of the dog pound, so I'm gonna have to look into that. But no, I think for me it didn't okay. It had an effect momentarily maybe on hip hop, and it's something that's like a funny thing that, you know, there were thousands of somebody did a first 48 sketch to it. I'm sorry, it was hilarious. But long term, now that it's been almost 2 years, I feel like it just showed me, and I wasn't somebody honestly that followed Nicki that closely, but it made me pay attention to her being in a frame of mind. She just looked different after that. Because then all of a sudden she was connected with Nas. And I wondered, was that a coinky-dink or was like that already going on behind the scenes? It just happened. It seemed like right after Shether, you saw her with Nas, or maybe a few months later, I don't know. And, you know, then she just seemed shook. Like she seemed different from how she had presented her. Before it was like she was unflappable, untouchable. So to me, the Shether effect wasn't so much on hip-hop as it was on just the perception of Nicki, and not because of anything Remy did, but because of how Nicki then started showing herself. She just didn't seem the same after that.
You feel like it made her more vulnerable.
I mean,
and it's okay to be vulnerable if you're in control of it. I don't ever want to seem more vulnerable because of what somebody else said about me or did to me, especially when I've always been like the baddest ever, and you know, can't nobody come for me.
Shit. Like someone just exposing you about your own shit. Like, I don't know. In my mind, the hip hop industry, like most industries, is just one big orgy behind a black curtain, and everyone gets fucked at some point. So, behind a black curtain, and everyone gets fucked at some point. So. It just is what it is, but I definitely don't feel like there was a Shether effect. It was a blip, it was like something to talk about, and then, you know, the 7 weeks went by, and we talked about something else.
If anything, it just added to me to what people love to see, which is fighting drama between women. And I'm tired of seeing that. It's so old already. Like, we are so much better than that. Come on.
And I mean, again, this just goes back to that Brooklyn shit. Like, everyone wants to claim Brooklyn and be up in arms about New York and Brooklyn or whatever else, but we got Fab going from being a charting artist to doing mixtapes that get downloads on Dat Piff or whatever.
Dat Piff! They used to be my shit. Sorry.
And then
I still got an account with them.
We got Remy hustling backwards, dropping diss tracks as though she wouldn't mind securing a couple, you know, 100,000 or however much she would get from getting plays on the radio and it being a charting thing. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's like the tropical fantasy of hip hop.
Tropical fantasy. All right, well then let's talk about. You said we can talk about something else. I don't want to chop up this person's name, so Kimber. Who's your pick this week?
My pick for the week is LadyLeshurr.
LeShurr, okay. I didn't want to say it the wrong way. Say it the wrong way.
LadyLeshurr.
Love her.
Shout out to LadyLeshurr.
I wish Eartha Kitt was alive to just say her name one good time. I feel like she would deserve that.
How would she say it?
Like with a
That's who could play me. Eartha Kitt.
Okay.
I would die if
Definitely
I.
Eartha Kitt.
Well, no, when we went to that Lee Kelly 47 party, you were kind of acting like Eartha Kitt.
Was
little
she?
Bit.
Wait,
Bit.
what did she
Little
do?
bit.
Drop
What
the
are you
tea.
talking about? She had a
Spill
little
it.
bit of Henny, and she was just like, Kim, come on, let's dance, honey. Let's show out. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
I was having a Nas moment because I looked out this huge window and all I could see was the skyline of New York. And anyone knows me, I don't drink dark liquor. And I was just like, what would not? Let me have a Henny and Coke. I'm going to just have a moment right now. Then I ran into Chef Roble and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I was a little Eartha Kitt-ish.
Yeah, shout out to Rocky Snyder.
Rocky?
And
The
Jay
most
Prop.
adorable person.
Yes.
She looks like a doll.
Yeah, I need her in my life and on our show, so I'm working on getting
Marcus
that.
Darling.
But,
Back to LadyLeshurr.
yeah, so,
I thought it was LadyLeshurr.
That's what I see, and I didn't want to
And
say
you
it the wrong way.
and then I need you to spell it the way Leisure's written, but to me it's LeShurr.
She's
and-
a UK artist.
Yeah.
Yes, from the UK.
Grime.
Right.
Grime.
She came out like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but she dropped like this viral video of herself freestyling in the UK. And then I think, was that Brush Your Teeth? No,
Yeah.
she came out with Brush Your Teeth after, or was that Brush Your Teeth?
So I think she did a series. It was like called The Queen's Speech, right? And
Right,
she has
the
like
Queen's
Yeah.
Speech. That
Yeah,
was the
she-
first one where she's like
Yeah.
walking through the streets, you know. So